各位网友，大家好，欢迎您收看新华网高端访谈，我是本期访谈主持人刘嘉文。今天我们非常高兴地邀请到正在北京出席 APEC 会议的新西兰总理约翰基先生，通过新华网与中国网友在线交流。Welcome, Prime Minister.
你好。
Good. First of all, congratulations on your re-election as Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. Yes, it was a great result. We won our victory for a third term, and so obviously it's great to have so much support from the New Zealand public and for the program that we are obviously rolling out in New Zealand.
Fantastic. Now, many Chinese netizens are waiting to join this online interaction.
Right.
So, Prime Minister, shall we begin?
Yes, let's begin.
Okay. First, let's see a question from a netizen, Little Cho. As we know that you have visited China 4 times in the past, what are your feelings toward your visit this time? What are your most unforgettable experiences?
Well, I was very excited actually about coming to China. One of the really pleasing parts about winning the election was I got an opportunity to come to the APEC hosted here in Beijing. And I knew this would be the biggest and best APEC that I've been to. This is my 6th one, and that's absolutely true. It's been just fabulously organised, and the facilities have been beautiful. And I think there are many unforgettable experiences, but I think the show last night was world class. I hope people had a chance to watch it. But the fireworks were incredible, and the dances were beautiful. So it was a great night.
I watched the fireworks. Indeed, it was fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's see a question from netizen Walker. The 2014 APEC Informal Leaders Meeting has just ended. How would you evaluate this meeting? What are your opinions on the role China has played in this event?
Well, China as the host sets the agenda, and it's been a very vigorous agenda. So President Xi Jinping, I think, has really tried to use the opportunity as the host to make sure that leaders got something out of the APEC this year. In particular, you've seen him having a very strong emphasis on trade and on FTAP, the wider free trade agreement. I think you've seen the President use the opportunity to announce a number of initiatives in terms of the Silk Road speech that he gave. And also he's been very engaging, I think, with leaders in terms of what we might achieve in the future, particularly how we can make sure we work together, how we can have economic reform. So look, in terms of the leaders' meeting, it was a very fruitful one, well organised. But you really have to say that they tried very hard to do something with the presidency, because sometimes that's not always the case. It's not so energetic, but he was put a lot of energy into it.
Right. Yeah. Good. So let's see a question from netizen Stone. Prime Minister, what's your view on the current international economic situation? How do you evaluate China's contribution to the economic growth in the Asia-Pacific region and in the world?
Generally, I'm optimistic about the global economic view. So I think if you look to Europe, their growth is reasonably anemic, quite poor. But equally, probably we've seen the worst of the situation in Europe. So unlikely to see the real issues that we saw in the past with Greece and Spain and Italy and other countries. But still, they're only really registering growth of around about 1%. So it's not that exciting. I think in terms of Asia generally, countries are demonstrating that they are trading quite well and that their economies are doing quite well. Malaysia was quite upbeat with their results that they're about to announce. Singapore is growing reasonably strongly. I think for China, China's always been the driving force in Asia, partly because of its sheer size and partly because its economic performance has been so good. So, yes, China will probably grow at, I guess, 7.5% this year, which is, what the predictions we have. We see some slowdown in terms of the headline rate, but I think that's largely because The authorities have been wanting to make sure that there's integrity and robustness in the banking system, and so some of the lending, I think, has been reduced, particularly in the property sector. But in terms of consumer demand, so a lot of the products that we sell into China, dairy products, meat, wine, we're seeing a continued increase. So consumer demand's very strong. But overall performance, is still very robust from China, and I think they're doing the right thing to make sure that they don't overheat their economy, because it's such a large economy these days.
Right. Good. Oh, netizens have posted so many questions. Yeah. Let's select one. Netizen Daybreak asked the following question. China-New Zealand relations have made leaps and bounds since establishing diplomatic ties 42 years ago. During your third term as Prime Minister, what are your expectations towards promoting our bilateral relations?
Well, one opportunity, I think, is that China has been looking to promote and has now newly established its investment and infrastructure bank. And so New Zealand is looking at whether we want to be a participant in that bank. But, I feel quite warmly disposed to what they're trying to do. I think there's no question that there's a significant infrastructure deficit around the region. And China, I think, is rightfully so identifying that gap and providing opportunities for countries like New Zealand and others to be participants. So that's one particular area we can work on. We obviously have the President in New Zealand in a week or so. President Xi Jinping will be there for a couple of days. Right. So it'll be a great opportunity just to show him what's happening in New Zealand. I think from a tourism point of view, China's our second largest market. So we will see, I think, continued growth in the number of tourists coming to New Zealand. And with the free trade agreement, we are really the only developed country that has a free trade agreement with all parts of one China, obviously with mainland China, but also with Taiwan and Hong Kong. And in all of those, we're seeing quite a significant increase in demand. So over the next 3 years, we'll want to continue to grow and develop those opportunities. But, from a country-to-country perspective, our relationship probably is in the best shape it's ever been, and our job now probably is to maintain it at such a high level as opposed to probably growing it, because in reality it's as good as it can really get.
Good. Now, a netizen called Strawberry asked this question. During your previous visits to China in March, the countries announced direct dealing between the RMB and New Zealand dollar. Now, more than half a year on, how has the project progressed so far? What are its impacts on bilateral trade between the two nations?
So pretty soon after we reached the, the suggestion was made by, I think it was Premier Li Keqiang actually that suggested that we might want to progress this idea. Then that was completed when I came to China in the early part of 2014, so this year. Yeah. And so trading has begun. And I think it's making a real difference, because you're seeing a lot of two-way investment in both countries. Fonterra, our very large dairy company, is making investments here in China, and certainly you've seen a lot of Chinese companies starting to invest very significantly in New Zealand. And I think in reality, having a direct trading relationship, it cuts costs in terms of businesses, they don't have to go through the US dollar, but more than anything, it's symbolic. And it's an example of the closeness of the relationship. So it's great from New Zealand's point of view. I've just noticed being here, I think China's looking at expanding its direct trading with a number of other countries, but it's nice that New Zealand's been so high up the queue.
Right. So, Prime Minister, you mentioned a lot of Chinese companies began to invest in your country. See, this netizen, Sunny Boy, asked a question concerning this. In recent years, many Chinese enterprises, such as Yashili Group, Yili Industrial Group, have been attracted to invest in New Zealand's dairy industry. As Chinese consumers pay very close attention to the safety of dairy products, what are some of the measures New Zealand would take to ensure the safety of its dairy products?
Well, the first thing I'd say is nothing is more important than the safety of those food products.
Right.
we know that consumers here in China, pay a premium for a New Zealand product, and we know they pay that premium because they're relying very much on the safety of that product. And thirdly, we know that a lot of the product is being used in areas like infant baby formula. And of course, the responsibility to make sure that the product is safe for the infant is very, very important. So we have undergone significant sort of testing, if you like, of making sure that our systems are the best in the world. We're constantly looking at ways we can improve to make sure the product has complete traceability, the world's best standard when it comes to safety and security, and we have high expectations of our companies that they will meet those standards, and any investors like Yashili and Yili, who are both now producing milk powder in New Zealand, that they also meet those standards. So I think it's right for your viewers to be concerned, in so much that that's the reason why they buy a New Zealand product. But my job is to give them absolute assurance that our safety standards are at the best in the world.
Having heard your answer, I hope they will not have to worry about...
No. Yeah, I hope so too. They shouldn't need to worry.
Okay, good. So a question from netizen Love Nature. China has become the second largest source of overseas tourists to New Zealand, while New Zealand is also increasing marketing efforts to attract Chinese tourists. Will New Zealand introduce new measures to facilitate visa issuance? How will New Zealand improve its hospitality capabilities while seeking to attract more visitors?
So to give you some perspective, 2.8 million tourists come to New Zealand every year. About 1.2 million of them are from Australia, and about 250,000 come from China.
Good.
So China's our second largest market. It's growing at about 30 to 35% a year, so it's growing very rapidly. It'll take some time before it's bigger than Australia, but obviously Australia is very close to New Zealand.
Right.
But China's a very important market. The second thing that's really important is that we have connectivity for passengers so that they can fly directly and easily. So firstly, we're very lucky that China Southern's been very supportive of its Guangzhou-Auckland route. And I think they're flying at least 10 times now. They're flying Airbus A380 to New Zealand, so they're flying big planes, good planes. Air New Zealand flies very regularly to Shanghai, and it's just putting its 787 Dreamliner on this route. So again, passengers will be able to get a very, very good product. We think also that China, I think it's true that China Eastern are going to fly, or Air China are going to fly some charter flights to New Zealand over the summer period. And I know, for instance, Queenstown is completely full for Chinese New Year. So it's a lot of people coming from China to New Zealand over that time. In terms of visa issuance, we've been vastly investing in our systems here in Beijing, where the visas are issued, and we're trying to issue both more multi-entry visas, so for business people that come very regularly, and to speed up the process. I think the process is a lot faster than it used to be. I mean, in the end, the preferred position we eventually want to get to is a situation where New Zealand's visa-free for China. And I think that'll take some time, but I think we can eventually get to that point. And certainly what we can do is speed up the process of making sure that visas are issued for longer, more people get multi-entry visas, and people can get their visas much more quickly. So we've got some ideas that we're working with your tourism authorities and our people on how we can make it even easier for Chinese tourists working through the operators themselves. So we're very lucky that we're an approved destination. In terms of the visitor experience, I mean, one thing that happened in the 1970s was that the Japanese started travelling to New Zealand, a bit like the Chinese nationals are now. And you saw a lot of Japanese being spoken in our retail stores and the likes. So what we're doing with China is we've just, funded a new program of language training in our schools, and Mandarin's really the main focus of that. Secondly, there's about 250,000 Chinese New Zealanders, so there's a lot of people that speak Mandarin or Cantonese in New Zealand, so that's a big advantage. And I think just generally we need to make sure that when people come they have a good experience in New Zealand and they can do that. And again, that's definitely been the case. We're seeing a lot of interest in Chinese coming to New Zealand.
Great. I myself wish to visit your beautiful country in the near future.
You come anytime you want.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Thank you. It seems to me this netizen is so curious about your career change.
Right. Yeah.
So this netizen, Blue Sky, asked, Prime Minister, you had achieved great success in the financial sector before entering politics. What motivated you towards the change?
Well, the main reason was to make a difference to New Zealand. I mean, I had always wanted to go into politics. I was very lucky with my investment banking career that I'd managed to have financial success and to achieve a lot of the things I wanted to. And I suppose you get to a point in your life where you want to make sure that you don't have regrets. And I think if I hadn't gone into politics, I always would have regretted that opportunity was there. I've been very lucky in terms of my political career. I've in modern day history got to become Prime Minister in the fastest period of time. So I became Prime Minister after being in Parliament for 6 years, and so far I've been Prime Minister for 6 years, so I've been very lucky in the opportunities I've had. But you know, it's a great privilege to be Prime Minister, and you know, one of the real success stories of the time that I've been Prime Minister is really the relationship with China. I mean, it's very much gone from strength to strength. We sell so much more product into China than we did. And the relationship is just broader, deeper, and, you know, really has improved dramatically. And I think, you know, hopefully that's the way the Chinese leadership feel about it. I think my sense of President Xi and Premier Li is that that's exactly how they feel about the relationship, that's doing well.
Great. Okay. Many netizens are very interested in cultural exchanges. Netizen, good study. Daily Up asks, China's Confucius Institute is booming in New Zealand. In your opinion, what are some of the measures which could be taken to promote bilateral cultural exchanges and cooperation between the two nations?
Well, I think firstly, at a government-to-government level, the relationship in a lot of ways has been economically focused. Even if you look back at the sort of four firsts with China, they were very much based around New Zealand's support of China's entry into the WTO and the recognition of China as a market-based economy, ultimately the negotiation and then the successful completion of the free trade agreement. But I think one of the areas where you are seeing a much broader and deeper relationship is in areas like science and technology, areas like higher education, where there's a lot more cooperation happening. We've had a lot of Chinese people in your food sector coming to New Zealand to learn about our food safety and standards and the sort of testing and the regime that we have in place. And for instance, we now have defence relationship with China, so we do that. We're working together on aid in the Pacific, and we most recently worked on a water reticulation plant in the Cook Islands. So it's a very deep relationship at a government-to-government level. I think at an individual and a cultural level, your reader's absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot of exchange happening. So I've been to a number of your universities here. You know, Peking University, Tsinghua. They all have New Zealand students studying here. And one of the ways I think we can do more is to have more New Zealand students studying in China. I mean, we have a lot of Chinese students studying in New Zealand, but I think it's really important to have our students studying here. And there's no question you have some of the world's best universities. Certainly there's a very strong relationship between Peking University and Auckland University. So I think there's great opportunities, and we need to continue to promote the opportunity for young New Zealanders on scholarship to come and study here in China.
Okay, great. This netizen, Small Rain, have this question. Before the election, Prime Minister, you used web chat to garner the support of local Chinese voters. What's your view on the contributions the local Chinese have made to the economic and social development of your country?
Well, it's been very significant. So China's probably our second largest source of migrants. So number one is still the United Kingdom. I mean, there's a lot of migrants still come from the UK. But China in recent years has been a much larger group of people coming to New Zealand. So there's about 250,000 Chinese living in New Zealand. They're very hard working. They own a lot of businesses, so they'll be very entrepreneurial. And it's been fantastic in terms of the cultural experiences. So things like the Lantern Festival or Chinese New Year. I mean, yes, of course, the Chinese community attend those events, but also, a lot of other New Zealanders go along. I mean, the Lantern Festival runs for 2 or 3 days in Auckland. It's got huge support from the wider public. I have to say also the food is a lot better as a result of the Chinese nationals coming to New Zealand. We have some very good restaurants in New Zealand. And I mean, I just think, the WeChat's it's another way of recognising, as you do with your very own organisation, that the world is becoming digital, online, people using mobile devices to want to contact each other. In fact, mainstream media really, I think, is struggling actually to keep up with, what's happening. People are buying newspapers less often. People are probably even watching television. In New Zealand, they certainly move television. They what we call My Sky, but they record it and play it later. But the online, both contact and capability is enormous. And I had dinner with Jonathan Yu, who's obviously the chief executive of Alibaba in New Zealand a few weeks ago. I mean, that's just such an amazing success story. I mean, I think they're going to be bigger than Walmart in a couple of years. They're already bigger than eBay and Amazon combined. So, your young people will know that pretty much everything they're doing is online and mobile and convenient. And as politicians, we need to keep engaging with people in that way. So it's been quite a big part of the way we want to distribute our messages and information.
Okay. Prime Minister, before you go, I have a question.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that President Xi is going to pay a visit to your country next week.
Yes.
What do you expect from this visit?
Well, firstly, I hope he'll get an opportunity as President to see what's happening in New Zealand, see the level of investment from China, level of engagement. We're taking him to a number of things where there's been Chinese investment in hotels and the food sector. So that's the first thing. Secondly, he was last in New Zealand as Vice President, of course, so it's was different when you come back as the leader of your country.
Right.
And he's very popular in New Zealand, so I think he is actually around the world. So hopefully he'll just have an opportunity to have a nice time in New Zealand. He's bringing his wife with him. We're having a private dinner with my wife and Madam Peng and himself. So hopefully he'll have some nice, some good New Zealand food, and but just a couple of days to continue to build the relationship. But I've got to know the President pretty well. I've had dinner with him here in the Great Hall of the People earlier in the year, and we had dinner together a couple of years ago when he was still Vice President. He's very engaging, and he's interested in New Zealand, and he has a great world perspective. I mean, I think if you look at people around the world that have great influence, today I was looking at the leaders meeting, and you really had President Obama, President Xi, and President Putin, and you can obviously have a view on all of them, but the three of them collectively probably have the most combined influence in the world.
Great. For sure, Xinhua Night will continue to cover that event.
Great. Well, we very much look forward to it. Hope you have a good time there.
Okay. Dear netizens, that's all we have time for today. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much for having this online interaction with Chinese netizens through Xinhua Net. We wish you a very pleasant journey in China.
Thank you very much. 谢谢.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good day.